Welcome to the Confident Common Clutch Car Ride Conversations. I am your host, Valerie Alston, here to help parents and young athletes spark meaningful dialogue about mental toughness, resilience, and confidence. Whether you're headed to practice, a game, or just running errands, this podcast is your go-to for building stronger relationships and lifelong skills, one car ride at a time. So let's dive in. This week, we're going to be talking about opening day mindset and starting a season strong. And the reason I'm talking about it is because the MLB season opening day is coming soon. So why not talk about it? What does it take to get your season started off right? Now, as a youth athlete, I know that your seasons are not as well defined as some of the pro leagues. Unless it's high school, then it's obviously very concretely defined. But if you're playing travel ball, you don't necessarily have true seasons the way you do with in a school context or in a major league season. But there's a lot that you can learn from the commencement of a new sports season. Opening day, if you will, symbolizes fresh beginnings filled with anticipation and excitement, the beginning of a new season the same way. And so athletes need to figure out how to navigate the thrill of starting a new season while effectively managing expectations and setting the tone for a successful season. All right. And so thinking about how do you prepare for your quote unquote opening day? Most of us don't have a ceremony the way Major League Baseball does with, all kinds of pomp and circumstance and all of that, but we all play our first game of the season somewhere. And the lead in, there's some sort of preseason that leads into that. So typically, what helps manage kind of the nerves and the excitement of opening day or your first game or your opening maybe a special certain tournament if you're a travel ball player, right? That first game, getting into the mindset of how to be successful. So one of the best things that you can do is what we call mental preparation or mental rehearsal. You might have heard it referred to as visualization or imagery, but essentially it's the act of going through things in your mind and imagining how you want it to play out. And so often this can include visualizing techniques to simulate game scenarios, right? Imagining, okay, if XYZ happens, then I'll do A, B, C. But you can also use it for non-technical, tactical things. You can use it for managing your emotions. You can use it for rehearsing how you want to respond to your physiological sensations of walking onto the field for that first game or having to stand. I know when I played in college, we did play the national anthem. And there was this whole, they read out the roster of everybody, they read all the subs and then they would read the starting lineup. You'd go stand on the foul line, or you'd go out to the field and stand at your respective spot and they do the national anthem and all that, right? There's pomp and circumstance sometimes. And so mental rehearsal is not just, as I mentioned, for the tactical, technical aspects of your sport. You can also use it for managing your emotions. And so thinking through, for instance, an opening day of Major League Baseball is like, what am I going to be feeling when the crowd is yelling and screaming? If there's a flyover, with planes and all that. Again, most of us youth people are not going to get that experience, but the ability to anticipate what it might feel like and then envision yourself successfully managing it, it's completely and utterly okay to be excited, to feel nerves, to feel butterflies, to hopefully not dread, but you're going to feel something, right? Emotions are normal. They're a reaction to your experiences. And so thinking about and anticipating what would that be like for me? If I can picture to the best of my ability what that opening experience will look like for my situation, you want to practice managing yourself through that moment. But it starts with having accurate expectations of what to expect. So that's the first thing you have to do. Mentally rehearse and visualize as best you can, or ask questions from coach and all that kind of stuff of like, what does that look like? What is the environment? What is opening day or the first game? What's the context, right? And once you have that, you start to mentally rehearse and be like, okay, how would that make me feel? How would that make me feel? And then figure out strategies of how you're going to work with that. So managing your excitement and your nerves is important. right? Because you might be super motivated, but it can also be overwhelming. And so implementing some form of mindfulness practice or self-regulation strategy, such as like a breathing exercise, can really help you maintain, appreciate the experience and live in it and be present in it, but then also regulate to the point of I need to kind of understand how it's impacting me so that I could switch back into game mode. Because at some point you do have to actually start and play the game. And so, how do you maintain your composure during that? And so that's something that we're going to talk about. There are many strategies. If that's something you want additional help with, of course, there's other podcasts that we talk about that, or you can, if you're interested in one of my courses, but figuring out that strategy. But believe it or not, just anticipating it, expecting it, knowing what's likely to occur for you can sometimes be enough because now you're not surprised by it. Now you're not thrown off guard. And so there's a term in the military that my soldiers use a lot is forewarned is forearmed, is that I know if I know what the enemy is going to do, I can better prepare for it, right? And so now obviously there's no enemies here, but if you know what your body's going to do, if you know what the environment's going to be like, you can anticipate and it's much easier to deal with because you're going to put systems and processes in place to handle it. Okay? So that's the first thing. Like actually mentally envision what that would look like and feel like for you so that you have some realistic expectations. All right. The next thing that you want to consider when you're preseason, kind of getting ready to start your season, is you want to make sure that you're setting effective, positive goals for a new season. Opening day mindset is still focused on accomplishing something, right? So, again, as a major league player, they're trying to make it to the playoffs. Their season is obviously super long, so that's a grind. For most of us in the youth sports space, your season's much, much shorter, especially high school sports, at most 2 to 3 months, right? So thinking about what do I want to accomplish? Like, what is something that matters to me surrounding this season? And it's important that you have two types of goals: an outcome goal, which is really more of a motivating factor. Like, what are you trying to achieve? What is the end state that you'd like to accomplish? So maybe that's making it to the state tournament, making it to the championship game, winning a tournament, making it to the postseason. Obviously, it'll depend a little bit on the history of your team and all of that. Um, but think of those outcomes as just motivational factors. Those are the nice to haves. That's what you're striving towards. But the second thing you need is process oriented goals. Because without a process, that's just a wish. That's just something that's nice. You're like, oh, that would be so cool and exciting. Like it's fun to dream about that outcome, but it doesn't actually help you achieve it. Right. So a process oriented goal is focused on the controllable aspects of performance, like your swing mechanics or your pitch accuracy or your defensive abilities, your ability to focus on your personal development rather than solely on outcomes. Okay. And that's something you can work with coach on, you can work with your individual coaches, but you want to have some sort of process oriented goal that's under your control for the season. I want to keep my batting average at this point. I want to keep pitching stats, error stats, whatever, right? There's stats that you can shoot for. Again, those are more outcomes, but the process, like how do I keep my batting average high? I reduce strikeouts. I battle every bat, right? So it's those process oriented things. Okay. Now, it's also important to understand the difference between short term and long term objectives, big picture goals. And so you'll want to have an overall long-term goal for the whole season, but also having intermediate targets, smaller, shorter-term goals that are achievable maybe in one tournament or achievable in a week's worth of play in high school. Obviously, it depends on your sport. If you're playing football or something, you're only going to play once a week. But if you're playing, volleyball or basketball or, you might be playing multiple games a week. So just consider that, right? You want a mixture of short-term and long-term goals. And the season-long aspirations that you're working towards, they provide you direction and motivation throughout the season. But those short-term goals are how you make progress. It helps you figure out, all right, if we want to win the state tournament, based on our experiences last year, what do we need to do in order to even make it to the playoffs? And then what do we have to do to win playoff games? What got in your way last year? Okay, well, those are the things that got in our way. As an individual athlete, what prevented me from doing that or being successful or having the success that I wanted? Okay, well, those are usually your areas of growth. That's where you can pull from to create your process-oriented goals. All right. So these are all things to consider. You want a bigger season goal. You want some shorter term goals depending on the length of season and how often you play. And then probably for each practice and game, you might even have a simpler goal that's towards your overall process. Okay. So you got to have big, medium, short term goals. Okay. Now, the other thing that's really important to consider as you're starting a new season is to really be able to manage your early season expectations and pressures. Okay. And the reason this is important is because you need to embrace adaptability. I happen to be a 49ers fan. I've grew up a 49ers fan, and I'm just thinking about the previous season, so the 2024 primarily season. And the 49ers had just come from the Super Bowl, and they're expecting have all these wild, grand expectations for their next season. And it was very clear within 2 to 3 games of the season that it was not going the way they expected, right? That they were having a ton of injuries and a lot of things happen that is adjusting their expectations of the season. So we want to embrace adaptability because early season performance may not always align with your expectations of how you think you should be doing. And also real life things happen, like for the 49ers, a ton of injuries. Their star player, Christian McCaffrey wasn't even able to play for the first 8 weeks of the season, all kinds of stuff. Okay. So sometimes you have to adapt your expectations once you've played a few games and you have some context and you have some understanding. But it's also important to note, however you start the season doesn't mean you're going to end that way either. Okay. So we really want to just be adaptable and flexible and not get so rigid with what you think should happen because you're rusty. Maybe you have new teammates, you have new dynamics, you have new context that you're playing in. And so things aren't always the same from the previous season. It's not just an immediate assumption that you will be the way you guys were last year. So these are all things to consider is just embrace an open mindset. Embrace this idea that challenges and opportunities for growth and adjustment are going to exist and just roll with it, right? Enjoy the process. Now, you also want to make sure that you're leveraging your support systems because you don't know what you don't know until you've started playing a couple of games. And especially as a youth player, you might have had an amazing season, let's say as a 12-year-old, but now you're moving up in an age bracket and now you're the young person in your age bracket. You're kind of low man on the totem pole type of thing. And well, you're a year behind. Some of the people that you're playing against might be almost 2 full years older than you. And so their bodies are more mature and all that kind of stuff. And so you were the strongest, you were the highest man on the totem pole in the previous age bracket, and now you've moved up. Sometimes understanding that takes a minute, right? That your expectations, your competition, your body might even be doing different things. So when I say leverage your support system, it's important to just understand, engage with your coaches and your teammates and your mentors to help you gain valuable insight and perspectives and encouragement because that transition might not always be easy. If you're formerly a JV player, now you're playing varsity. If maybe you're a stud freshman and you go straight into varsity, well, again, you might be playing against people who have way more developed bodies and quite literally 4 years older than you. That's a big maturity gap, believe it or not. I know you might not want to hear that. So just understanding there's a lot of reasons why you will need support as a young athlete, okay? And so don't shy away from that. Make sure that you're embracing your support system, your coaches, your teammates, your teachers, your parents, and ask for help if you need it. Or what maybe worked for you the previous season is no longer working, and you need some help from coach to help you make some adjustments. So again, using early preseason or the beginning of a season as information to help you adjust and become even better. So those are things to consider when you are getting ready to start a new season. Mentally prepare, like what do you think it's going to be like to start at the beginning, the first few games, the first opening season, set some effective goals and make sure you manage your expectations and pressure. Okay? So let's go through some questions. I want to offer some dialogue prompts here for you. So just a reminder as we hop into these conversations is that there are no wrong answers. Make sure you take turns, parents and kids in the car, or coaches and players. Take turns talking and listening and sharing your experiences. Try to limit your distractions as much as possible. And remember that you can pause after each individual question and discuss, or you can just listen to all of the questions and have some open dialogue. All right, so let's get into our first question. This is for the athletes. How do you mentally prepare for the excitement and the nerves associated with the start of a new season? What have you done in the past? Okay, can you share some specific techniques that have helped you stay focused during high pressure moments or in that early excitement of a new season or a new game or new tournament? Okay. Parents, reflecting on your own experiences, whether that's in athletics or any other environment that you've experienced, how have you managed the anticipation of the beginning of a new project or a new phase of life or a new season if you happen to be a former athlete? Like, what did you do? What are your own experiences that you can share? And what were your strategies did you use to set positive goals and handle those early expectations? What are some strategies that you've used? Okay. Together, discuss the importance of setting both short-term and long-term goals at the start of a season. How can these goals influence your performance and your motivation? Right? And more importantly, what are your goals, right? So make sure first talk about the importance of them, and then I hopefully transition that into what would you actually like to accomplish, okay? Now, a follow-up to that is we talked about your support network, tapping into your support system is how can you support each other in maintaining a balanced perspective on the expectations and pressures of starting a new season? Okay. Because parents and kids together, you both have an impact on this, right? Parents, the way you talk about the season, the way you inadvertently discuss what you expect of your child, overtly, maybe it doesn't even mean inadvertently, and your kids, the way you talk about your season and the way you explain your hopes and your dreams for the season. If you say you have a goal and then you don't do any of the work to move towards it, you're probably going to have a parent that bugs you about it. Hey, I thought you said you were doing XYZ. What's up with that? So I bring all of this up to say is work on getting on the same page, right? All right. So remember to keep these conversations rolling. If it naturally progresses into other things, that's fantastic. But let's really make these car rides count. And we'll see you next time. Thank you again for joining me on the Confident, Calm, and Clutch Car Ride Conversations. If you found this episode helpful, please subscribe to the podcast so that you never miss a moment, and share it with other parents or coaches who could use a little extra inspiration on the go. You can join my newsletter at www.confidentcalmclutch.com/newsletter for more exclusive tips, tools, and updates. Or if you'd like to do a deeper dive on some of the actual mental tools that could help you with some of the discussions that we had today, please consider buying my book, Confident, Calm, and Clutch: How to Build Confidence and Mental Toughness for Young Athletes Using Sports Psychology. And the link will be below in the show notes. I also love to hear from you. These conversations are designed for you. And so if you have suggestions for topics that you would like to discuss or you would like help discussing with your young athlete, again, in the show notes, there's a prompt to share with me some ideas. What would you like to talk about? You can also send suggestions to me on Facebook and Instagram at V Alston Coaching. All right, y'all. We will see you next time.